The story of Cupid and Psyche. The story of Cupid and Psyche is a story of a curious young woman who finds herself at the mercy of a goddess's wrath, with a dark prophecy that comes into fruition and a creative twist on what love really is. This story inspired the tale of Beauty and the Beast itself. Psyche was the daughter of a king and queen. Psyche had two older sisters and was known to be the most beautiful of the three. In fact, she was so beautiful that people began to compare her to and against Venus, the goddess of beauty herself. The people who discovered Psyche were so entranced by her looks that they began to worship her as the actual goddess of beauty. Thus, over time, Venus's altars grew empty as the rumor of Psyche spread. Venus, feeling offended by this mortal being praised like a goddess, decided to take action against Psyche. Venus sent her son Cupid to shoot Psyche with an arrow to make her fall in love with the hideous beast. This was seen as a horrendous punishment in the eyes of a goddess who puts beauty on the highest of pedestals. Though when Cupid set on his mission, he gazed upon the beautiful Psyche, and it was as if he stabbed himself with his own arrow and fell deeply in love with her. In some stories, he actually does stab himself upon seeing her. After seeing Psyche with pink-tinted lenses, Cupid could not make himself shoot her with the arrow to fall in love with the monster. Instead, he defied his mother's wishes and decided that he wanted Psyche all to himself. During this time, Psyche's two older sisters have already married despite being less beautiful than her, and Psyche's lack of suitors at the doorstep asking for her hand in marriage caused the parents to worry. The father then grows suspicious as to why this is and decides to consult the oracle of Apollo. The oracle's prophecies always predict the future, and no matter how hard any mortal or god may attempt to escape their fate, they can never win the battle of fate versus free will. The oracle often reveals the future in cryptic, puzzling messages. In this instance, the oracle told Psyche's father that she will marry a non-human creature with the wings of a beast and one who even the gods themselves fear. The oracle instructs Psyche's father to sacrifice his daughter to the creature at the top of the mountain. Sadly, the father returns home with this news and shares his knowledge with his family and the town. Knowing that the oracle voices the future, the town begins to prepare Psyche for her big day. She was dressed in attire that resembled her funeral more than her own wedding to this monster. The town takes Psyche up to the mountaintop and dreadfully walk back home, leaving Psyche up there all alone by herself to be at the mercy of the beast. Though when Psyche was alone on the mountaintop, she felt a gust of wind lift her up. Zephyr, the west wind, lifts her up out of her location and places her in an empty field. Psyche, unable to stay awake, falls asleep as soon as she steps on the grass, and when she awakes, she set her eyes upon this beautiful palace, built with gold columns and ivory accents, large beautiful ceilings and marble floors. The palace itself appears to be alive as the dishes came in and sweet songs echoed through the chamber from lyres which she cannot see. A voice spoke to Psyche and encourages her to take full advantage of the home and its splendid amenities. All which she desired is just a request away. Eat the food which is made, use the bath, enjoy the bed, it is hers to use. In the nighttime, a silent visitor gets in bed with Psyche and cares for her with passionate love. But before dawn can raise her rosy red fingers into the window sills, the unseen guest leaves, leaving Psyche in a room wondering where he went. This cycle of invisible servants making delicious meals for Psyche, invisible music playing melodies for her, and her nightly love-making guests repeat over days and days. Psyche and this being begin to get close and discuss the relationship and about themselves, their likes, dislikes, personalities, and much more. Psyche wants to see her husband, who she shares her bed every night with, but he declines. He explains that she can have every gift that he can possibly give her, but she must never see his true form. She must resist the urge to behold him in sight and trust the way he treats her as proof of love and devotion to her. Though reluctant, Psyche agrees. After spending time in the secret palace of hers, Psyche begins to long for her family and wishes to see them. Psyche expresses her feelings to her husband, and though unwilling at first, her husband agrees that her sisters can come visit her. Psyche awaits Zephyr, the west wind, to follow her husband's orders and bring the sisters down from the mountaintop to the palace. Psyche is ecstatic to see her sisters and embraces them. Finally, familiar faces which she could see and appreciate, she leads them to the palace and begins to show them everything her husband granted her. The servants, the jeweled architecture, the music, the perfect meals. Though Psyche's intentions were innocent and only cared to express joy, the sisters grew envious of her younger sister having so much granted to her. They began to speak with hidden treachery brewing within their tongues. They begin to question her husband, to ask about what he does, who he is, and what does he look like. Psyche claims that he is busy all day and only sees him at night when he comes back home. She, albeit naively, admits that she does not know what he looks like. This statement got the sisters to poke and prod at Psyche's trust in her husband. They begin to question the idea of trust and love itself, and they ask her how anyone can be loved or trusted if they never show themselves to you. They remind her of the oracle's prophecies and explain that this husband of hers could very well be the hideous beast that she is doomed to marry. Now growing concerned, Psyche begins to believe what her sisters are saying, and so they construct a plan for her. They tell her that she must see what he looks like, even if it is against his wishes. They tell her to bring a lamp into their room, and after he falls asleep, she must light the lamp and glance upon him. If he happens to be a monstrous beast, she should have a knife in her other hand ready and kill him quickly. The sisters leave, but the seed of thought they planted in Psyche's mind begins to grow. She decides to go through with the plan and readies a lamp and a knife for the perfect moment. One night, after her husband returns home and is sound asleep, Psyche grabs her lamp and knife. She lights the flame and approaches her husband. But to her surprise though, she sees instead of scaly skin, beautiful golden skin. Instead of horrific monstrous wings, she sees soft white feathers only fit for a god. Instead of a hideous form with sharp teeth, she rests her eyes upon none other than the son of Venus, Cupid himself. In sheer amazement of his beauty, Psyche fails to realize that she tipped the lantern and dropped wax onto Cupid's skin. Surprised by the heat, Cupid awakes in a rush and sees Psyche staring at him in the candlelit room. He feels betrayed by his wife. She did the one thing he asked her not to do. He fulfilled his promise on one condition, and she decided to break their promise. He retreats to the window and flies away with his ivory white wings. After chasing Cupid through the window, Psyche finds herself on the field again, this time all alone. Psyche decides to return to her sisters and find some comfort in them, but they have other plans. Knowing that the marriage is going through a rough patch, the sisters decide that now would be a good time to try and take Cupid from Psyche and be his wife instead. One at a time, the sisters go to the mountaintops where Zephyr is known to escort them, and they offer themselves to Cupid. They call upon Zephyr to take them to the palace and instruct Cupid that they are the wives that he is meant to be with. They take a leap of faith and throw themselves off the rocks. To their surprise though, the wind does not guide them to the palace. One by one, the sisters take their chances and plummet to their deaths as their bones bash against the jagged rocks beneath. Psyche, now all alone, begins to wander the lands in search for her husband. And she is searching for him, she discovers a temple of Ceres. She cleans and organizes all of the misplaced items in the temple, then she prays and worships to the goddess. Ceres, who was once in Psyche's position, wanted to help the young woman and told her of how she can be in the good grace of the gods again. Ceres instructs Psyche to seek the temple of the goddess of love. Psyche visits the temple of Venus and prays for forgiveness upon the goddess. Venus, still insulted by the empty altars and the injured son from this young woman, decides to give Psyche a task to prove her devotion and sincerity of apology. She devises a plan that is designed for failure. Venus instructs Psyche to the granary and tells her to separate each individual grain according to their type. Venus explains that she has a feast to attend with the gods and that this task must be finished by the time she returns. Feeling overwhelmed by this, Psyche retreats into her feelings of defeat. Cupid, however, was watching from the heavens and wanted to help. He instructs the ants nearby to help Psyche with the task, and one by one they begin to move the grain into their individual piles. Venus returns from the feast and is stunned that Psyche found a way to complete the task within the given time. This enrages Venus, so she decides to construct another seemingly impossible task. The following morning, Venus tells Psyche that she must gather wool from the vicious golden sheep across the river. Psyche, feeling overwhelmed by this task again, feels that it's too much to ask for a mortal to do. She approaches the river and sees no way out of her impending doom. This suffering will be too great for her, so she decides to begin drowning herself. But when she goes into the water, she hears musical instruments playing in the wind. The river god took pity on this young woman and decided to help her. Psyche comes out of the water and listens to the reeds playing. The reeds begin to tell her of how she can do this task without being beaten by the sheep. The river god tells the young woman to wait until noontime when the sheep have exhausted their aggression and rest in the shade. Then she can go into the bushes nearby and pluck the wool off of the branches that snagged the pieces off the sheep as they were passing through them. Upon hearing this, Psyche felt inspired again and followed the river god's instructions. She gathered the wool at noon and presented it to Venus. The goddess was not happy and sent out yet another task. She says in order to progress on this journey, Psyche must bring back some black water from the river of Styx, which is guarded by serpents and dragons. Psyche goes to a cliff above the river of Styx with her vessel and gazes upon the daunting task. She feels powerless against the obstacles and doesn't feel like she can finish this mission. Zeus, now feeling pity for her, sent down his bird, the eagle, to help her. As Psyche is standing on the cliff, she sees a giant bird swoop down and grab the vessel out of her hands with its talons. Awestruck, she sees this bird fly down to the water, fighting off the hostile creatures, and scoops up some black water. The bird returns, gives the water to Psyche, and flies off again. Psyche offers the water to Venus, and Venus begins to suspect that the gods are helping this poor girl. Venus gets angry and decides to give her the most impossible task she can think of. Venus orders Psyche to enter the underworld with the box and asks Prosepernia to fill the box with beauty and bring it back to Venus once filled. Psyche, not knowing how she can enter the underworld while being alive, decides she needs to kill herself. She climbs to the top of the tower and plans to throw herself off and meet her end. She was at the edge of the building when she heard a voice speak to her. The voice told her not to throw herself off because he knows a way of a mortal to enter the underworld while still alive. The voice explains that there is a path where the world and the underworld come to meet where mortals can pass. The voice explains that there are a few obstacles that need to be overcome once in the underworld though. She must not get distracted by the haunting mourners that will beg for her attention. She must stay focused and look ahead, careful not to try and aid one of these weeping disfigured beings. The ferryman Charon is responsible for taking the souls from the overworld to the underworld. Charon requires a fee for passage, so Psyche needs to take 2 coins whenever she wants to pass. Afterwards, she will encounter Cerberus, the three-headed watchdog of the Lord of the Underworld. Cerberus won't be happy to see her, so Psyche must take honeyed barley cakes. These will pacify the aggressive dog and give her an opportunity to pass by. Once she meets the Queen of the Dead, she must receive the gift and never open the box. This newfound information gave Psyche the plan to finish the quest. She came off of the ledge of the building and began to gather her necessities. Psyche went to the underworld, kept her head straight and made sure not to help anyone lying around, until she reached the edge of the water where she met Charon. She paid her 2 coins and used the boat to get to the other side. After getting off, Psyche finds herself face to face with Cerberus. She gives him one of the honeyed barley cakes and he decides to eat them, which allows Psyche a chance to pass. Now in the depths of the land of Pluto, Psyche finds herself at the foot of the throne of the Queen of the Dead, Prosepernia. Psyche explains why she is there and asks if she can have some of her beauty in the box for Venus. Prosepernia agrees and fills the box. Psyche returns back to the living world, passing Cerberus with another cake, 2 more coins for Charon, and ignoring the weeping bodies. Now back in the land of the living, Psyche finds herself walking with the box and suddenly curiosity strikes her. She begins to wonder what could the beauty of Prosepernia look like. Perhaps she thought she could use some of this beauty for herself and look more attractive for when her and her husband reunite. She opens the box, but instead of beauty sent by Prosepernia, she finds a ghastly eternal Stygian slumber. The essence pours out of the box and causes Psyche to collapse on the floor as if she were a lifeless corpse. Cupid sees the entire chain of events unfold and cannot sit idly by while the woman he loves needs help. He swoops down and begins to heal her from the goddess's powers. Cupid carefully places the sleeve back into the box and tells his wife that she must finish the quest and deliver the box to Venus. Psyche agrees and Cupid meanwhile flies to the heavens to reach Mount Olympus. The god of love approaches Jupiter and asks for his approval of this marriage. He asks if he can help solidify their love. Jupiter agrees to help the god of love and asks the other gods to be present in this matter. Psyche was taken to Mount Olympus to be present in front of the assembly of gods. Jupiter states that he agrees to let this girl be married to Cupid and the wrath of Venus must be put to an end. Jupiter hands Psyche a drink of ambrosia to solidify her immortality. Psyche takes a drink and becomes an everlasting entity. The gods rejoice and have a celebration of this marriage. Cupid and Psyche have a harmonious marriage and raise a child together named Voluptas, or Pleasure. This story unravels the idea of why love is blind. Psyche was betrayed by everyone in her family even though they pretended to love her. The sisters were envious and tried to ruin Psyche's life. Meanwhile, everything in the palace was invisible and Cupid didn't show his face. He proved that love doesn't need a face, but it is an invisible force which can be felt and trusted.